25th to order. Please call the roll.
I think I should Robin is. I'll have to fill in, I'm sorry. Yes. Commissioner Becky Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Stoker.
Here.
Commissioner Lemke.
Here.
Mayor Mervin.
Here.
Alderman Strelczyk.
Here.
Commissioner Shorn.
Here.
And Commissioner Hawley.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next up is approval of the meeting minutes from March 21st.
Move approval. Second.
Any comments, questions, corrections? I wasn't there, so you'll have to provide them all yourselves. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The minutes are passed. Next up, Milwaukee Flower Company. Applicant is seeking a conditional use grant approval to allow for a florist for the property located at 6100 West Executive Drive, Suite A. This requires a public hearing. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of entering public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
We are now in public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak on this topic? Seeing none, is there a motion to close public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second to close. All in favor say aye.
Applicant.
Oh,
The applicant.
oh, you can go up next then.
Oh, it's on consent.
And with that, take it away if you'd like to.
Well, we have these both are on consent. So once we open and close this hearing, we should open and close the second hearing, and then we'll
Okay.
take a motion on the consent agenda.
Got it. So we'll ask for a motion to go into public hearing for the second item.
Yes.
So moved. So moved.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of entering public hearing, please say aye. Aye. You're now in public hearing. Any comments? Hearing none. Looking for a motion to close.
So moved. Second.
All in favor of closing public hearing? Aye.
Aye.
Now we're closed.
So now we have it on a consent agenda, so you can take a motion on the two items on consent, if that's the way you want to do it, unless there's any discussion.
Motion and a second. Any discussion, or would the applicant like to say something before we take swift action?
I'm so excited to finally have space for my business, and just wanted to be here to witness. I'm excited to have a space for my business, and just wanted to be here to witness this.
Commissioner Schaefer.
But these are two different businesses, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Just coincidentally, we have two
They just
floors
happen
that
to be.
near each other on the same agenda, so that's
Okay.
why we have.
But are you Lataire or are you?
Milwaukee Flower Company.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Shortly, I think.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see.
We're happy to have you, hopefully in a couple seconds here.
Yeah.
Any comments, questions?
I would move
Yep.
to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We already did
We
that.
have a motion and a second, yeah.
Oh, I
Oh, we need
interrupted
to
it. didn't
All those in
Really
favor of
moved.
approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
And both those measures pass.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Welcome.
Next up, public hearing, Trees for Less. Applicant is seeking a conditional use grant approval to allow for a landscape contractor business for the property located at 11550 North Wasaki Road. Is there a motion to enter public hearing?
Jack, didn't you just ask to go into that?
What's that?
Never mind. Oh, never mind. Yep, second.
Is there a motion first, then we'll second it?
Motion.
And a second.
Public hearing.
Okay. All those in favor of entering public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are now in public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak on this matter?
Motion to close public hearing. Second.
Motion to close. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are closed. Now, staff report maybe.
Sure. This is a conditional use grant for a landscape contractor business. Many of you may recall this was approved a number of years ago. Back in 2016, the applicant was in front of us for a similar request. At the time, we had a lengthy debate on a number of different items. There were some site compliance issues. Most of that's all been addressed and cleaned up. The current request is required because the applicant did not go forward with the request, and the approval had lapsed. So now he's back in front of you again. And so basically what this is for, and I'll put a little diagram up on the screen. So this was the original location of the mulch that was done previously that did not have approval. So one of the conditions that it was required that he had to meet the setback. This was within the 30-foot setback area. The applicant is now requesting to put the new location here, and as a condition of approval, we're asking for a more formalized kind of storage plan for this area, but it will obviously be outside the setback area.
Jack,
So-
can you give us some reference, where's Wasaki Road?
Oh, sure. Let me, I'll kind of, there's a survey I'll show you in a sec here. So basically what we were just looking at, this red dot here is kind of the proposed location. So Wasaki Road is going to be down here, and then Mequon Road is going to be down here. So this is a couple large parcels. So this is pretty far back off the site. So the request is to do the mulch storage options right in this location here. As with the last request, the staff is recommending that the only allowance for the mulch is for sales to customers and delivery to their homes. So there's no allowance for retail to come and pick it up, and there's no allowance for the applicant to sell it to other wholesalers or other landscape contractors business. So it's a pretty narrowly defined requirement. So with that, and I know there was a packet we left in front of you. I did talk to the city attorney. He stated that the ongoing litigation is irrelevant to your discussion and potential action tonight, and you should take it for same value you take for any other discussion or public feedback that you get. So as with in 2016, we do recommend approval of the landscape contractor business with a storage plan as part of the condition of approval, as well as the hours between 8 and 4:30, and that's for all hours, not just operations, including deliveries. Everything has to be within that 8 to 4:30 time frame, and again, no retail or wholesale distribution of mulch. And I just will remind everyone that there is a permitted nursery business on this site as well. So this is separate from that permitted use that's allowed by rights under the OA zoning district. So with that, we do recommend approval. Thank you.
Commissioner Chorn.
Now, all the items that were listed out of, in 2016 that were deficiencies, those have all been corrected?
Yes, we had our code enforcement officer, Scott Pinzer, was out there within the last couple of weeks just to verify that everything has been addressed, and he did not find any new violations.
Is the mulch made there?
The mulch, under our requirement from years ago, we made the determination that the grinding of mulch is not considered part of the nursery business, or we don't also consider it part of a landscape contractor business. So in this case, the mulch would have to be delivered in bulk for him to then resell it to others. He would not be allowed to create mulch on site. That does not, we don't feel it falls under either landscape contracting or nursery.
So if somebody else creates it, brings it there,
Then he sells it as basically as he gets it from a bulk and wholesaler and then sells it to them.
Okay, understood. Because I think, if I remember right, in 2016, there was some concern about noise and such, but given the fact that there isn't anything made there, it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, and that was brought up in the enforcement letter that's in the packet, where it stated that we did not feel that the grinding of trees into mulch was considered part of a nursery business or as part of a landscape contracting business. So we have a number of other landscape contractors. I'm not familiar or aware of any of them doing their own grinding on site. Again, they typically buy it in bulk and then they store it at their locations and then they deliver it to their customers as needed.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Would the applicant like to add anything?
Good evening. Thank you, everybody. I'll try to be quick. My name is Sam O'Malley. My wife, Lisa, and I bought the nursery from my father just recently at the very end of 2021. I've always had a very big interest in the nursery, but I never knew if it would be the right decision for my family. I started having conversations with my dad 10 months ago. In the next 2 years, my wife and I hope to build a house on the land. The land has been in my family since the 1940s. I've always had a deep connection to the land. I have 2 little kids, and I hope that they have the same amazing growing up that I had in all my years out there. It really is a special place. I've spoken with many of my immediate neighbors about my plans for this CUG, with most here in support behind me, including my sister, who had it just landed, actually. She was delayed coming in from Denver, but she had planned on sitting next to me, but she's gonna miss the meeting, unfortunately. But you know, Trees for Less has made great strides since 2016 to to become, a really good neighbor to those around us. I myself hope to be the closest proximity neighbor in, the next couple of years here. My hope is to build. And I fully respect and understand how amazing that part of Mequon is. I will run this business with that in mind always. We are beyond excited to continue this small local business that has been in operation and serving Mequon and southeastern Wisconsin for 35 years, and I hope to keep it going for many years to come. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Alderman Strelchuk.
Oh.
Commissioner Strelchuk, sorry.
Either way, it works. Welcome. Thank you. Congratulations on the new purchase. You're running a legacy, and it's been a great business for years. So I wish you luck moving forward. I voted against this in 2016, and the premise for me voting against it in 2016 was the noise level in close proximity to the Peg and Peter O'Malley property line. In knowing that mulch gets delivered, typically comes in via semi if it's getting delivered. I'm glad to hear that we're not grinding on site. Comes in via semi. That's an activity that can be heard at the neighbor's property very easily. And then the loading and unloading of trucks, if you were going to do any type of wholesale business, which it says that you're not, correct?
No,
the concern is I know that those get loaded by Bobcats, so they're going forward and back and the beeping consistently through the day. What is your intent on addressing that concern for the neighboring property that, in my opinion, is a little too close to this portion of the operation?
Sure. First and foremost, to move it, it's quite a bit further away. I think the number was about 75 feet as opposed to the minimum setback that was allowed. Peter and Peg are my cousins, and they are in full support of the business as is moving forward. And so I hope that, that would alleviate some concerns on your end. We also have created a fairly large berm, and we'll continue to do our best to minimize any sort of noise complaints on their end.
That was my next question, if there was any noise, deadening that you were looking to do in between. You got great pine trees on your property, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're doing our best to just create a barrier. I want Peter and Peg to live out in that amazing piece of land that has been in our family for, like I alluded to, since the late 1940s. I don't want them to not enjoy their lives out there. That's the last thing in the world I want. So.
Okay.
I see someone in back. Want to come up to the podium and. If you could, for the record, please provide your name and address.
My name is Peg O'Malley, and I live at 11710 West Mequon Road. If you look at that photograph from above, you would probably be able to see my house if it was just a little tiny bit more this way. Peter and I are the closest in proximity to this nursery. I think in the past there was some misunderstanding about how that mulch business was going to be run. It was fairly new, and it was very loud. Rick did everything that he could to try to, take care of it, but Sam now, since he's been here, has been very, very assertive with me about saying, we have to build a berm. This is not going to work for you unless we do this. So he was very helpful and suggestive, built a huge berm between us and the nursery, is continuing to add to the berm. That is just like, it's like built from Roman times. I don't hear anything anymore. In fact, if I hear something, I'm like, oh my gosh, what was that? And I go out and take a look, and it's usually from the industrial park, not from Sam. So I have absolutely no objection to him doing this the way he's been doing it so far. He suggested trucks coming in with mulch would come only after 9 o'clock in the morning, which for me was perfectly fine. I don't care. I'm awake. 6 o'clock, 5:30 was kind of early before. And they don't come in the evening. So I have absolutely no problem with it. I want Sam and Lisa to succeed like his dad did. And I don't know if any of you knew Dr. O'Malley, but it was his father-in-law who really started this business long before 35 years ago. It's been a dig your own tree place for many, many years. And so many of our community get their Christmas trees here. It's part of our community. So I agree completely with Sam's idea with what he wants to do. One more thing I would like to say. I think it would be something to consider to allow Sam and Lisa to have a small retail operation where they sell Christmas trees. I know they're given a special permit for that, and I don't know really how it works, but I own 2 businesses in Mequon. I love this community, and I live out there. There's no place to go get, you got to go to Germantown or to Miners. A lot of people don't know he's there. And if he had permission to have something small and tasteful, like the Christmas trees that everyone loves, I think it would be a fabulous thing to consider. And that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure. Commissioner Strelchek.
Do they not allow do we not allow Christmas tree sales?
No, well, it's separate and distinct. We handle Christmas tree sales on a temporary use every year. So and I don't know if they've done it the last few years, but typically what happens is the ones that do sell it around the city, they send us a letter sometime in October, November saying we like permission to sell trees from this date to this date. And they give me a little site plan, and we typically approve them on a case-by-case basis. We don't have a lot of them. We have approved them in the past for the O'Malleys. I don't know if they requested it in the last couple of years or not. I can't recall.
Is there a reason to just not include that on this?
Well,
because
it's not really. I mean, you could incorporate it into it. It's not technically landscape contracting business. Christmas trees is kind of a little bit different. So if you wanted to ratify that in the conditional use ground, I guess I won't object. To allow them to do it, but we typically, again, handle that on a temporary use basis.
Okay. I'd like to add it in, so whoever makes a motion, if you beat me to it.
I see one more person
I'll
from
be
the
quick.
audience.
So my name's Bill Gruber. We own just over 10 acres just to the south of this property, and just want to say we're totally supportive of Sam and everything he's doing, the family. So,
Excellent. Thank you.
you bet. Thank you.
Oh, 2 more. Come on down.
Hello, my name is George Mladinov, and this is my wife Danielle. We have lived for about 11 years at 11500 North Wasaki, which is the parcel just south of the tree farm driveway. So all the activity that happens by the Christmas tree sales and the trucks that would go up the driveway and down the driveway are literally like right next door to us. We've got 7 kids that we've raised in our home throughout the years. You know, we've had babies sleeping and things like that. And, it's never really been an issue for us. We've never really had any noise complaints or anything like that. Or Rick has always been an amazing neighbor to us, Rick and Lisa, and we love having Sam next door, and we absolutely have no complaints whatsoever, and we would hope that you would consider his business.
Thank you. Commissioner Stoker.
First off, I'd like to thank you for the improvements from 2016. I think I did support it in 2016, but obviously there's been great strides. Before I make a motion, are you okay with the recommendations for staff with the hours specifically?
Yes.
You have no concern with that? And then just for my own knowledge, is there a desire to have some sort of other retail sales other than the Christmas trees?
Well, I wouldn't say I know what the future holds. Maybe someday in the future, but as of now, just want to walk before I can run.
Sure.
And bring a little bit extra in to help support the business, and that's all I have now. But at some point, I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Obviously, that would have to be handled in a separate motion. The motion I'm about to make is to, if there's no other questions, or I'll make a motion, we can have further discussion we need, but I'd like to motion to approve the conditional use grant with the three, the conditions that staff recommended. I'm also okay with ratifying that this would allow Christmas tree sales. Do we put a time frame on that, Jack?
I don't think you need to. The kind of market tenant dictates.
Okay. With the allowance of Christmas tree sales, I guess from this point forward, yeah, I think that's it.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And the motion passes.
Thank you.
Congratulations and
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Welcome.
best of luck to you.
Appreciate it. Really do.
Next up, we have Ascension Medical Office. Applicant is seeking a PUD amendment approval to allow for amended hours of operation for the medical office for an existing PUD for the property located at 12831 Northport Washington Road. These are not for that.
You gonna speak on this?
Maybe a very brief staff report.
Sure. Basically, this was many of you probably recall this in front of you for the original approval for the medical office, which required a PUD. At the council level, there was an added requirement to limit the hours of operation. The applicant is asking to extend that hours of operation from 7 to 7 versus the currently approved 8 to 6. Staff has no objection to the hours of operation. Most of our medical clinic facilities are permitted uses where there is no time frame. In this area, you have one that's basically across the street. You have St. Mary's Hospital. You have Highland House. They're all obviously in operation much longer than this is, so we have no objection to the request. Unfortunately, it was part of the PUD, so it requires a rezoning, a PUD amendment to get this approved, so this will have to go on to common council for final approval.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the commission? Commissioner Schaefer.
The only thing I was trying to remember is when that was originally approved, if we did it with the assumption that perhaps the land behind it was going to be developed as a subdivision at some point, so there would be greater proximity to that, to residential than there is right now. Right now, I think it's sort of, the surrounding area, that's not an issue, but the rest of that parcel obviously continues to come up with various proposals. I can't remember if that was just a blanket 8 to 6 or if we did it mindfully. And I didn't find that in the minutes either, so I don't remember.
Yeah, that was actually added at the council level. It wasn't even added at PC, so that you guys didn't even have a discussion really about that issue. So that's why it's not in your minutes from the PC. I just believe the reason for the time limit was to just mitigate the impact on the surrounding neighbors, not just the stuff that's undeveloped, but the existing stuff to the south as well. And again, I don't necessarily think that the additional hour in both directions are really going to cause any issues with the neighborhood. So again, we're supportive of it.
Well, I tend to agree. It's a fairly low impact use to begin with, and there won't be so many people coming early or so many people coming later. It will be concentrated in the middle of the day, but it will provide some flexibility for their operations, certainly. Is there a motion? Oh, well.
Hi.
I didn't even see you sneak up there. Sorry. Trying to move it along too quick here. Applicant's free to add any comments they'd like.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Nervent, and thank you for having us here, members of the Plan Commission. I'm Tracy Weimelenberg. I'm the Director of Advocacy with Ascension, Wisconsin, and I'm here with...
I'm Nicole Gonzalez. I'm the Director of Administrative Support for this location and a few others in the Ozaki County.
So we appreciate your consideration of this proposal tonight. I think what we just wanted to highlight was, we're committed to being good neighbors to the surrounding community, and if in the future this should become an issue, we will do everything we can in terms of traffic mitigation and other issues that might arise to address those. We think it's important to extend these hours to address our patients and families who work during the daytime, need appointments before and after work and school. And these were the same hours that we did have at the clinic across the street. So we're just hoping to extend that, knowing that it's people are back in the office now and they are needing to access their appointments outside of work hours. So that's really the purpose of this, and we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And that measure passes. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And our last substantive item on the agenda, Lemel Homes for Gregory Dvorkin. The applicant is seeking a specimen tree removal approval to allow for the removal of 5 specimen trees for the property located at 13106 Northwest Shoreland Drive. Take it away, Jack.
Sure. Well, the city forester is here, so he can add any more details that that he feels necessary. But I do have the map on the plat on the screen. It shows in red the trees that are being requested to be removed. I know Mike's been working with the applicant for quite some time on trying to mitigate the impact of the trees. This house will not have a full basement, so there's no overdig. But I think Mike can speak to it, but I think they've worked really hard on trying to maintain as many of the trees as possible on site. So I'll turn it over to him and let him elaborate.
Maybe put a pause and let the 2 people who signed up to speak first, and then
Sure.
you'll have an opportunity to respond then. So we have 2 people signed up to speak. First, Dan Abendroth opposes and wishes to speak.
Good evening, Commissioners. Nice to see you all again. I live at 12960 Northwest Shoreland, right down the street from this site. I'm really not here to oppose putting a structure on this property, but to suggest that it can be done without sacrificing any of the specimen trees. The Tree Preservation Ordinance empowers the City Forester and the Planning Commission to require, not to negotiate, but to require plan modification and/or alternate location for site development, or to recommend setback or offset variances in order to preserve the specimen trees. In other words, it's your duty to do everything you can to preserve these specimen trees. If you look at this site plan and you look at the structure's footprint, it's pretty obvious that you could reduce the size of that footprint or modify it, or the structure could be moved south and west on the site into the southwest corner where there are no specimen trees. Either option would preserve the specimen trees on this site. Now, some people may say the code requires an 1,800 square foot house, but the code also requires a 1 acre lot. So if you want to enforce the code, you're going to have to enforce the whole code. This is an undersized lot. It was platted about 100 years ago when people built 600 square foot cottages, not full-size suburban homes. So making modifications to this proposal in order to preserve specimen trees would be appropriate. An offset variance for the southern lot line would also be appropriate, and it wouldn't be a problem because that's where the applicant lives, to the south. So please, apply the Tree Preservation Ordinance as it was intended to be used, and require a plan that preserves all these trees. It's possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abendroth. We have William Dredge. He opposes and wishes to speak.
Hello. Thanks for giving me a chance to speak. There are basically 2 things that we wonder about. The plat map as supplied doesn't reflect accurately the specimens based on the legend that was supplied in terms of their diameter measurements and the notations on the map of their diameter locations. There are several missing. So we'd like to know where they are so that we can see where they're going to be relative to the structure planned. For instance, there's a 27-inch hickory, which is the grandmother for all these trees, and she's not on the map. So we kind of like to know where she is. She's not annotated in here. We're concerned about the fact that this house doesn't qualify to be on city sewer. It doesn't qualify to be on public water based on its elevation. There's no sewer in front of this house. There is in front of the applicant's house, but it doesn't go down the grade that this lot is on. And as a result, it'll have to either have a septic system or a holding tank. And there's no holding tank in this drawing. And they're quite large. They would impact the roots and or the trees. So with the well, there's no well indicated on this drawing. The last thing would be that the drawing that's supplied, the legal description lists this as a 5-acre plot. I don't even think his own residential lot and this lot annotate 5 acres. So that's inaccurate as well. That's all I got to say. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dredge. That's it for people making public comment. Any comments or questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Chorin.
There were a couple of comments made with regards to the size of the lot and the allowable square footage of the house, Jack. How does this... There were comments made with regards to the size of the lot and the size of the house. What does the zoning say about this, Jack? And then the point made about the sewer, how is that going to be addressed?
I'll let Cole's here. He can talk about sewer and water. I would assume it's on a well, but I'm not sure about sewer, so I could have Cole answer that one. In terms of the lot, it's on there right now. I'm not sure what he was referring to, but if you look right here, basically the lot is about 0.58 acres in size, and that I believe is accurate. The code requires a lot coverage requirement. This is a zone 2-acre piece, so it's actually a non-conforming lot. So you're allowed to use the closest lot coverage to the size of the lot equitable zoning district, which would be the R4 zoning district, which allows up to 20% lot coverage. So they're at about 12.9%, so they're still low. 1,800 square foot is the minimum. The other issue with the setback, this is a little bit unique because the property to the south actually did a restriction amongst themselves to have a smaller setback on their parcel and a larger setback on this parcel. That's why you see that setback at 35 feet, because he has a shorter one on his property, and you have to maintain a distance on both of them that is equal to the overall. So I believe these are R2, and you have to, there's a formula you have to do to determine what the actual setback is. I believe it's around 20.7, so you have to be about 41 feet. So that's why there's an increased setback there. There's also in the R2, uniquely, it's the only zoning district we have that requires a 75-foot setback off the front. All the other ones require only a 50-foot setback. Now, having said all that, yes, I think the specimen tree ordinance does allow the commission to have some authority over making some modifications to those requirements, and I think that's up to you to determine what you think those are appropriate in this case. Again, I'll let Mike speak to the work that they've done on that house to try to mitigate the impact, and he can address the other question about the large hickory. I believe that was referred to by one of the speakers.
Thank you.
So just looking at that lot, I believe there's 32 specimen trees on the lot when we did the original inventory. We kind of worked with the builder to kind of mitigate, because I think the original suggestion was 18 trees removed. They kind of bumped in corners, obviously took away the basement and to not allow for the overdig. The big trees that we were trying to preserve, and the reason I disagree with moving the house to the south and to the west is, where on that, looking at that, are you referencing not being able to take down any trees? My main concern was trying to preserve the 2 swamp white oaks that are 36 inches in diameter on that south side of the proposed house. And so I already feel like we're really close to that, but I have concerns about that I expressed to the builder. I think with not having the basement, I think you're going to be able to preserve those long term as long as we take some modifications. And we also wrote into the memo that they would have to have protection on these trees. And so I feel pretty good, you know, knowing that they were proposing 18 trees initially, working with them to get it down to 5. This will be a sensitive lot. That hickory, I believe, is listed on there, but I think it's listed, I don't know where they were taking measurements. It's listed as a 24-inch, I believe, not a 27-inch. I believe the hickory is on there, represented on there. But I don't know if they were measuring the base or DVH. So, but that's what I think. I mean, the other thing too is some of these trees by specimen requirements that are being allowed to take down, I believe, are just under specimen requirements. So when we inventoried the entirety of the lot, we were measuring kind of everything that met the species requirements for specimens, so that we could get them put onto the GPS, overlaid onto the plat here. And so we listed trees that were even like 7 to 9 inches, just so that we knew where all those trees were, so that we could see what the relationship of the house was. Again, I feel fairly confident that, you know, in removing 5, I mean, we've talked about this before at this board, that it's hard for us to deem a house or a lot unbuildable due to the specimen trees. I think the work and effort that we put in to mitigate is, you know, the number of trees that are coming down the best we could. I'm satisfied with that. This will be a sensitive lot for us, and one that we keep an eye on, because we will want to make sure that, you know, fencing is maintained and required during, you know, construction, because it is such a sensitive lot. I mean, but we have spent probably a month and a half on this with the builder.
And how many iterations have you gone back and forth with the applicant?
Well, I mean, originally, like I said, 18. Well, at first they wanted to clear the lot. So I mean, that was obviously something that I guess you could count that as iteration number 1, which obviously wouldn't have flown. But then I think it went to, I want to say it was 17 or 18 trees was second iteration. And then, you know, we've ended at this 5. So again, referencing the fact that there's no basement and there won't be the overdig that's necessary for that, I feel better about this.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Did any of the iterations consider this 35-foot setback and getting into that, since the owner of both lots happens to reside on that lot that's immediately south?
Yeah, so I don't know that personally. I mean, that gets into the zoning thing so that'd be a question for Jack. What we did consider is that if you slide that to the west, you're going to be into a whole nother grouping of trees, you know, that I don't know where you'd move it west where you wouldn't be, you know, and south. I mean, you're talking about a setback that's, I understand, 35 feet now, but even if you slid it south and west, you're still going to be into at least 3 specimen trees. So I think it's a give and a take here. So, you know, we were trying to preserve, looking at the distance that the dwelling kind of is proposed to go back towards those 36-inch oak. Those were what I looked at as prime saving trees on that. I mean, those are legacy trees, not, you know, removing a 9-inch hickory versus, you know, impacting a 36-inch oak. I think I'm treating more of like a legacy issue versus
Priority, right? What about east?
Yeah, east would be possible. And that was one of the things we talked a little bit about. You have a little bit of room to get it closer to the river, and there's an elevation there, so that there shouldn't be a floodplain issue. So you could scoot it a little bit east to try to save a couple of those if possible.
Then you lose those 36-inch ones.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Is there a,
Commissioner
looking at this
Stoker.
plat, and I'm not looking at the plans, is there what appears to be an 8-foot by 20-foot section behind the garage? And that would be what would be going into the 36-inch trees if this thing moved east? Or is that part of the dwelling, or is that, I can't tell if that's some other marks on the plat? It appears to me that that's.
Yes, it is.
So it's. Okay.
Yeah, it would, if we slid it.
Bottom line is, there's really no room to go east without taking out that 36-inch legacy tree.
Right, that's exactly why that corner was cut out, to save those 2 bigger ones.
Commissioner Shorn.
And the sewer, issue.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I'm not positive where the sewer ends on Shoreland. If they were within 200 feet of the sewer, then they would be required to connect, but I guess you're also balancing if there is sewer right in front there, then you'd have to probably jack up the building, and your grading would probably also affect more trees. So yeah, I don't have a sewer map right now here.
We were under the assumption that we would have to have a holding tank, and that's figured to go in the southwest portion where there is no trees of the property. We believe the grade is way too low and the sewer ends, I think, more than 200 feet off the road.
So a holding tank, there's no field involved, it's just a tank?
Correct, it's just a tank. It would be a 4,000 gallon tank that, I mean, it doesn't take up as much space as you think it does. There's plenty of room for it. The contractors have already viewed the site.
How often does that have to be serviced?
About once a month.
Any further comments? Oh, Alderman, or Commissioner Strelchek.
Mike, I'm seeing dotted lines awfully close to trees. So knowing that you want to preserve those 36-inch trees, like what legitimately, like quantitatively, is your confidence that those trees are going to survive with the current plan?
I think the 36-inch trees, given that there's not a basement on this, have a good level of survivability. I think, given the distance here, if we can do some protective fencing and stuff on these, I feel pretty good about where the house is. I mean, it's not the best. I mean, let's be honest. If I would love to say, okay, we can't build on this lot because it's part of I think it's part of the remnant mezz piece that goes all the way through Bouquet Woods to the west. But that's not realistic. And I think those were the trees that I was the most concerned about, along with that larger hickory that I looked at, the legacy trees. If you look at the lot, there's some trees that are a little bit closer, that where you say the dotted lines get close. Some of those are some 9-inch hickory, some 7-inch hickory. They're a little bit smaller trees. I think you could feasibly save those trees without the overdig for the basement if we were able to, kind of build those into where there's going to definitely be some difficulties on this lot from a building process. I mean, I don't think we're going to allow for, tracking of like a sky track through the front, area here where we've kind of preserved most of the specimen trees up in that kind of northwest quadrant of the lot here. So if I said that, there wasn't going to be difficulty from the building side of things, I'd be lying, because I think there should be, because we want to preserve as many of those as possible. But I think the 36-inch oak should have a survivability. I mean, the grades I feel are being left pretty close to where they are. That, again, referencing or kind of just speaking to what Todd had said, the grades are basically going to be, they're not raising the elevation of the home, and that's kind of what really sold me on what's coming down. Is if they had raised the grade even 18 inches, we would have been looking at a bigger cost here.
Can any of them be moved based on the size that they're at? A spade, or is that just
I don't think so. They were virgin grown, so my guess is that all of them are going to have taps on them, and so to try and even spade something like that, you're probably looking at almost like a colonization of root systems in there. So trying to spade any one tree, you might be affecting other trees. That's going to be the difficulty.
And you're recommending approval of this?
I do, just because I know how much work we put into trying to save as many of them as we could. It's just, this isn't something that I like to speak in favor of. I mean, obviously I'm here to, try and protect these trees, but I think looking at the trees that are on this site and looking at what it could have been, this may be the best of those. I just don't see a feasibility to sliding the house as far over to the south or to the west as you'd have to. I mean, you look at the buildable space on this lot and you'd be taking it down to, I mean, I don't even know what that square footage would be if you took measurements on it, but you'd almost have to be into that 35-foot setback totally in order to try and get, to save some of the trees by scooting it, that far forward and to the south.
What's that 8 foot 9 inch area that's causing another tree to be removed on the southeast corner?
That's a section of the garage. One thought, just looking at it up on the screen here, is if we were allowed to move the garage 2 feet closer to the road. I mean, we're right at the setback for the road, the 75 feet. If we could encroach on that, we would be 2 feet further from that larger tree in the back.
Would you want to move it forward 2 feet? Would that benefit you?
It doesn't. It just helps with the tree. We're 2 feet further away from the tree, so I think that's a benefit for everybody.
So you'd have 4 removed instead of 5.
No, it would just.
You're trying to just stay
I'm
away
just
from
trying to get as
from the
far away
36.
from the one that we're saving, the larger one.
I'd be okay with a modification to the setback.
But then you've got that 15-inch tree right next to the driveway. That might be affected if you move 2 feet. But you should be able to work around that.
I think just the just the driveway.
We
Driveway would
can
stay
change
there. The garage would just move a little bit.
Okay.
Commissioner Schaefer.
What's the square footage of this house?
It's just over 1,800 square feet.
What if we made an exception to make it smaller than that?
I mean, we could, I guess.
That's my preference.
Well, the minimum's
Yeah,
1,800
but
for the
if we're
district.
taking down trees, we can also make an exception.
Yeah, we do have some flexibility there. I mean, I guess going historically, we haven't been most consistent when it comes to specimen tree ordinance with removal, especially in wildwood preserve. So I think over the years, we've been more likely to work with applicants to try to mitigate some of the trees instead of trying to basically say no. But I think you do have some options here. I mean, obviously, this doesn't have to be a straight line either. This could jut out a little bit further back here. If you want to play with that front setback, we could do that too. Most of the houses along that stretch are not at 75 feet. Most of them are not conforming because they've been there for so long. So that is a potential you could look at as part of your approval. Again, it's just been one of these things over the years we haven't been totally consistent on the removal of specimen trees on a case-by-case basis. So
I'd be fine with the modification to the setback, especially given the surrounding area and some of the existing conditions. So could we work on a number there? We're probably not going to be able to make it up on the fly tonight, but it seems to me if you were able to shift the garage just a little bit farther forward, you could maybe even pick up one more tree you're preserving and have a healthy buffer for that 36-inch tree that's there.
I mean, if you allowed for a 10-foot deviation, that gives you some pretty good distance and potentially could save this one here if you went up 10 foot here with that garage. I don't know how that works for the design, but I think 10 foot would be enough to give you some play to work with. And it wouldn't be that, again, it would be pretty close to, I think the existing house here does jut out because it was an existing house when they first remodeled it. So I don't think that would be that out of the street pattern on that stretch of being at 65 feet.
So that's a suggestion. I'll let someone else turn it into a motion.
Design-wise, that would work out just fine with the plan if we push the garage closer to the street and left everything else the way it was. And I'm confident we could save that other tree in the back area.
Yeah, but I want to move that in.
I've got a question for the applicant. Would
Yeah,
you
I don't
be
think so.
supportive of a smaller house? You said like we could maybe work with that, but would that be something you're interested in?
I would have to talk to the client. Everything has been squeezed down dramatically for the list of items that he's after inside the house. So we've worked around all the trees numerous times to get it to this.
Commissioner Stoker.
I guess I'd like to ask the forester, I appreciate the fact that you're trying to save the 36-inch legacy trees, and I would have been in favor and probably made a motion to move forward with this. Moving the house 2 feet, 5 feet, 7 feet, having the front yard setback get smaller, in my mind, again, I don't know what those two 12-inch trees off the front stoop are. You may pick up one of the larger trees behind the garage, I would defer to you. You know, we pay you to be our city forester. You recommended approval of this. I wouldn't want to make a motion tonight saying, allowing this this to be moved 10 feet forward unless you think there's some significant gains, or is it worth that?
I think anything that you can distance yourself from these trees is going to be a benefit. I mean, I think that without the basement, I mean, that's really what I was looking at as far as what the impacts to that root zone, deep impacts to that root zone would have been. I mean, you're not saying at this point, with those being that close there, that there aren't going to be, you know, surface impact to those root zones. But I was hoping to, you know, I think 10 feet would be a difference. I mean, for sure, it's, you know, I don't think anything that you can move from those trees is going to be a bad thing. So
I was just talking about
my question, maybe more. This is more of a question. The two 12-inch trees off the stoop, the 15-inch tree that is on what would be the northwest corner, that's going to be more impacted by pulling this house forward.
Right.
Clearly.
Well, I was actually saying just move the garage.
Just the
not
garage.
house itself.
Got it. Okay. I mean, so we're essentially saying we're going to move the rear of wall, the east wall of the back of the garage 10 feet forward, which would certainly give those trees a lot more benefit.
Correct. Yep.
Clearly, the garage is going to need to get deeper for the home. I assume you're the builder, not the homeowner?
Correct.
Okay, so your garage is going to get deeper, at least on the north half.
Yep.
Which I'm sure the homeowners would like as well. And that 15-inch tree, or the 15-inch tree that's currently on the north side of the driveway, if we go 10 feet, I don't know that you're going to be able to work around that tree anymore. So that one is, in my mind, probably going to have to be eliminated.
I think we could step the garage, so, because there's two garage doors, so the lower portion could be pushed out, and that portion, the north portion of the garage, could stay as is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It would
just pull the single
because it's
stall.
already stepped back
Just
like
pull
by
the
2
single
feet,
stall,
so we'll just
or-
pull that one on the south out.
That I'd be in favor of then, because then I think you can salvage that 15-inch tree, and you're going to do nothing but help the trees on the behind the garage.
Want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'm ready to make a motion.
I will make that motion that we approve keeping the house in the existing location and pulling the southern single part of the garage 10 feet further to the west in order to give more room for the trees behind the garage.
Commissioner Stoker, which trees are you intending on saving in that motion?
I'm sorry?
Are you intending on saving?
I don't know that, I think we will save the one I can't, it's the one that's blackened out
You
right now.
should say the one that's closest to that southernmost 36-inch oak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
With the goal to get it from 5 to 4.
I'm sorry?
With the goal to get it from 5 trees to 4 trees.
Yes.
I'd make a motion to table, just to see the plan one more time and be comfortable with what came forward.
I hate tabling things. I'd rather have it handled at the staff level. If it can't be handled at the staff level, then we can have it come back. Just to try to keep the process linear.
So there's been a
We do trust staff, I hope.
So there's been a motion?
There's been two motions.
No second.
No second on either motion.
I'll second John's motion.
That motion includes a formal setback waiver for the
It does.
for the front of the garage.
Correct.
To 65 feet from 75. So we have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Let's call the roll on this one, just to make it exciting.
Okay, this is on Commissioner Stoker's motion.
Yes.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer?
No.
Commissioner Stoker?
Aye.
Commissioner Lemke?
Aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin?
Aye.
Alderman Stralchuk?
No.
Mayor Nurbin?
Aye.
Vote passes 5-2. All right.
All right, next up, announcements. Next meeting is Monday, May 23rd, 6 o'clock. Come with come well fed. I think it's gonna be a long one. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.